Any of those confusing and multitudinous ways I just showed you will result in a braid that has less of a twist to it if you're going to make the striped version and you don't want that twist to show. I just wanted to present those as options, and since I talk about them in my tutorial, I wanted to be on the video. Let's see how much time I have. Not much more, so I guess we're done. I'll do a few more of my regular moves. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, this will probably be part 2 of this clip because now I've gone over my little 15-minute maximum. So, continuing on with the 4-loop braid, the 4-loop version of the spiral braid, what I would also like to show you is a way to make a little, park these loops for a minute, make a little, well, basically a loop. Here's a braid with a loop in the top. I'm not going to do one in the top. I'm going to do one like this that I normally would do at the end of the braid, but I'm just going to do it right where we are in the middle. It's just handy to have a loop in a braid, even both ends of a braid. If it's going to be a key fob, or maybe a key fob and go through your belt loop, or a bracelet closure of some kind. And I got those in the wrong fingers. The way to make a loop is to divide your braid, and there's a lot of different ways to do that, and the simple way I'm going to do now is by doing one braid with the orange loops and one little braid with the blue loops, and we'll use that 2-loop braid that hopefully you already learned. So I'm just going to set the blue loops down. Really nothing bad's going to happen to them. I might tug them a little bit like that again if they start to intrude into my other braid. And I'm just going to start braiding a 2-loop braid here, and since I'm not going to go particularly slowly for this because I have some, let's put it down though, I have some videos showing this, both right-handed and left-handed versions. This is a right-handed version of everything. So that's pretty long. Depends on how long you want your braid to be. Your loop to be. So sure enough, this is a little bit, I might even want to undo this because I think there's going to be, there's going to be a little gappy thing there. I should have yanked this blue out. I'm going to undo the braid. Sorry, this is going to take longer than I thought. Undoing is basically just looking at your moves. I should have done that upside down. Just reversing them. This is basically like doing the left-handed, literally like doing the left-handed version of the braid, which will undo the right-handed version. Okay, I had started this, done the first couple of moves and hadn't pulled the blue, so I'm going to tighten kind of well, so avoid that problem I just had, the gaps, and then I'm going to give it one little more yank here. Let's yank those blue loops there. And this time I think I tightened better. You want to tighten the top where could possibly gap. Get it loose. Okay, so here's first leg of that braid, and believe me, I've now done several versions of these braids, several YouTube videos, and this was the first time I had to undo. You won't have to undo. I was just sloppy. Although I really recommend getting used to undoing. It's very handy. So let's maybe do a little more. 1, 2, so it shows on the camera. Okay, so there is a somewhat long mini braid. Let's see if it shows. I'm just going to set those loops down. They're not going to really come apart. I could demo this second one while holding those loops on my other fingers. That really is possible, but I think it would be too confusing. So now I'm going to, let's see if that shows. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I know I didn't show this before, but I sometimes do make this braid kind of pulling up, leaving the one loop kind of straight and pulling the other one up. And braid different ways, different times. Okay, so let's just see how long. Let's eyeball it. Actually looks about right. It's another instance where undoing is kind of handy sometimes if you made it too long. Okay, that looks about right. So now I'm going to join these two together, and I'm just going to do the spiral braid again like we were doing before. Now I can see it. Okay, so if they weren't in the right color order now, I would just put them there. They are, though. Darks on one hand, lights on the other, and now I'm going to start my, here's move number 1. We went through in part 1 of this. Move number 1 goes through, tighten, and it only can tighten up to the base, I don't know if it shows, the base of those 2 braids, or those 2 mini braids. There they are. Can't go any further. 2. Chin up, over, pulling it. See now that I did make the orange braid is a bit longer, but that's not a big problem. Okay, so 1, 2. I'm not going to go so slow here because you can always go back to the first part if you want to review more slowly. I'm thinking now I can show the fringy stuff. I mean, it's basically doing a little fringe of two braids at the bottom is basically the same thing as what we just did, the divided part for the loop. So now I'll just, oh, and let's see, this time I'll drop 2 different colors. So we'll do a little fringe. I'll just fork the end of this braid into 2 braids. This time I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing the 2-loop braid, but this time with 2 colors. And this will just be a little somewhat ridiculous long end to this funny little braid. But in general, in braids, I often do like to end with mini braids. Since this braid has no purpose other than just to be a demo braid, it's kind of an odd. The loop is in a funny place, and fringe is going to be as long as the braid, but just to give you an idea, when you get to the bottom, I've shown, now it feels like many times on these tutorials, when you get to the bottom of doing this 2-loop braid, there's no twist in the loops, so you can just let it go and it'll coil up and twist up on itself, which pretty much keeps the braid from doing. So there's this little, it's twisty, and you can leave it twisty. It's kind of cool with that little curl to it. It makes the pattern look crazier if it's twisted. If you untwist it and say wet it or steamed it, you do, really, I think with this braid, I just wet it under the tap with a little hot soapy water and rinsed it off, just the fringe part. Wet it and hang it, and it'll be pretty straight. I mean, it straightens out, and then when it's straight, you really see, then turns out the design, pattern really is quite clear, a nice, clean chevron pattern. When it's twisted up, it sort of looks, I like the shape of that twist, but the pattern gets a little wonky looking. Okay, let's get the other 2, and do the same thing. Put them on, tighten up well. Braid, if the braid the mini braid gets in the way, just pull it out. Oh, I got my hands in the way. I'm doing this somewhat awkward. I'm doing it around the camera. So one thing that these demos are not showing is what your posture, I mean, you're going to have to get that on your own. I just couldn't get the distance and the close both going. So that's about it. You don't have to stay till a nitty-gritty end here. I'm just going to braid down to the bottom. I have several versions of this video online. I have left-handed versions. This is one of the few braids that's handed. I mean, most braids have a reciprocal sort of motion that anything the left hand does, the right hand also does. These are spiral braids are some of the few that don't. There's something else I was going to mention. Do check out my blog. I have a lot more loop braiding information there. My blog is called Loopbraider. It's a WordPress blog, and if you just Google Loopbraider, you'll find me. So what we learned was how to do the 4-loop spiral, which is a really handy braid. In fact, actually, later we'll be doing the 8-loop spiral, the classic one. And what's really fun is you can do a loop at the top that is a 4-loop spiral joining into an 8-loop one. It's really pretty and very fun, very easy to do. The 4-loop spiral is small enough. delicate enough and dainty enough that you can use it as a warp finish, especially if you're using really fine, with a braid, if you're using really fine threads like silk threads. A little delicate or loop braid, or set of them at the bottom of a bigger braid can look really pretty. I'm going to take my header cord off. It's floss type. It's kind of coming apart here. Okay, there we go. A little rushed, I'm sorry, but hopefully it conveyed the main things. There. Okay, and the braids, check out the Braid Society's Yahoo list, Braids and Bands. It's a very list full of a lot of knowledge, and it's not a super chatty list, but there's a lot of wealth of information there in those files, including several tutorials. Mine's going to be one, but there's been some fantastic ones before me, and they're all available in the files. Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, and a lot of information like that is in the more info link below this video. If you see, go down to the information and where it says more info, just click on that. Okay, thank you very much for watching my video.